This panel is called the State of Indoor Location, and we've got a diverse and really interesting group of folks here. All right, so this session is called the State of Indoor Location, and its intent is really to lay out the different technologies and to help the audience understand what's out there in the market, currently deployed, and also to talk about some of the business issues that arise from these. So this is essentially the different array of location technologies that are currently available. Everybody gets all the slides, so you don't need to take notes or take pictures. Camera, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth 4.0, Bluetooth Low Energy, RFID, magnetic, LED lighting, and sound. And they are deployed to varying degrees, most of them not widely deployed, and they have different benefits and different costs associated with them, and we'll be talking about some of these throughout the day. Down on the bottom is some vague list of buyer considerations. Accuracy of the technology, how widely deployed is it already, how costly is it to deploy, how fast, and what are the privacy considerations. The more accurate the technology, the more privacy is implicated. I had a different slide that had a matrix with evaluating the different capabilities, and that was a little too controversial for some people, so I dumbed it down a bit and didn't weigh in on ranking these in terms of their accuracy or cost, etc. Okay, so why don't each of you introduce yourselves and talk about your companies and give us a sense of where you are in this whole ecosystem. So, Avinash.
Hi, I'm Avinash Joshi. I'm Chief Technologist for the Wireless LAN Group for Motorola Solutions. For those of you who don't know, Motorola Solutions is not part of Google. We are still an independent company operating in enterprise and public safety. As far as my business unit is concerned, I represent wireless LAN. We are a major player in enterprise Wi-Fi and probably have presence in 60 of the top 100 retailers in the world. Being a major player in Wi-Fi, we are also pioneer in indoor locationing technologies and had our first Wi-Fi-based locationing product sold to the market way back in 2005, 2006 time. Several of our customers are major retailers and have used our locationing solutions. Having said that, we strongly believe that Wi-Fi is not the only way to do indoor locationing, and we have invested in several other technologies. So stay tuned with an interesting announcement coming from us around NRF. And I do want to stress and end my introduction here that Motorola Solutions strongly believe that just providing accurate XY is not the end game. For the customers we serve, the largest retailers out there, we are trying to provide a complete, comprehensive solution. And we are partnering with as many companies as we see fit to provide that comprehensive solution. One example being Retailligence. They bring customers to the store, and then we take over and try to provide them a personalized shopping experience. So I'll end with that note.
Good morning. Zack, Sterngold, VP Americas, Boingo Wireless. Many of you may know Boingo Wireless as an operator of Wi-Fi hotspots. In addition, we operate quite a lot of cellular infrastructure, and most recently we've been adding Bluetooth to some of our networks. In all cases, we invest in wireless infrastructure where we see a monetization strategy. We've been successful in doing that in airports, malls, arenas, retail, and we see a huge potential in offering location-based services on our networks, a big monetization potential. In fact, it's not a matter of if it's going to happen, it's more a matter of when it will happen and how it will happen. As to how it will happen, as a company with deep Wi-Fi expertise, we would have preferred that Wi-Fi be the perfect solution for everything, and we have found that it is not, and that in many cases to achieve the appropriate value proposition we need to supplement with other technologies. One interesting example is in airports where we're installing networks that will measure the wait time at security checkpoints, and that's added values for airports so that they can stay on top of TSA to the limited extent they can, and also to help set passenger expectations and selecting the shortest wait in line. So we see this is one of the very early opportunities, but many more to come on our networks. Thank you.
Good morning. My name's Leigh Presutti, and I'm Senior Director of Qualcomm for all of our product management and business development initiatives for location in general. Qualcomm has been in the location space for 12 years. We have over 2 billion devices out there that have our location technology embedded within it. And we're now taking the capability to the next level, and that's indoor location. We have a solution based today on Wi-Fi using signal strength and time of arrival. And we are also, within the company, there is a group focused on proximity-based solutions as well, using Bluetooth beacons. So we think for the indoor location space, it's going to be a compilation of technologies depending on the use case of what venues are trying to solve out there. There will definitely be a need for both. Wi-Fi is out there. It's one of the major infrastructures out there, and when we first thought of entering that space, we tried to look across what would be the most cost-effective way to get the ecosystem started. And with Wi-Fi so pervasive in public venues and every smartphone having a Wi-Fi chip on it, that just seemed to be the way to get started within that arena. But as you get down to the specific use cases of what people are trying to solve, certainly there will be more augmentation strategies that go with that. Where we are within this space right now, we have started to ship our software as of last year that has the indoor location component within it to support Wi-Fi. And in July of this year, another division within Qualcomm announced support for the Bluetooth beacon. So as we look across the space, as I said, we see both being accompaniments with each other. And again, a very important point that was already made is the ecosystem is going to be very, very important in this space. You can't just bring out technology on a device and have the infrastructure there and then not have the key components of the ecosystem supported. So by that, I mean you need to have maps there, you need to know where Wi-Fi access points are. You need to have application developers ready to create the applications. And we're also seeing a host of all new competitors coming into this space. So it's not the traditional folks we used to see in the GPS arena. Now you're seeing the venues wanting to own the customer. You're seeing the access point infrastructure vendors wanting to own the customers. The carriers want to protect their customer base. And you're seeing a whole new entrant into this arena, so it's going to be really exciting to see where it goes. Thank you.
Yeah, hi everybody, my name is Leigh. I'm going to bring in a little bit more the mapping perspective. I'm more of a mapping guy, but certainly very interested also in the local commerce side of things. I'm the head of venue maps at Nokia's Here, which is of course the mapping division of Nokia. I've got roughly 15 years of experience in the mapping world. I actually am a GIS guy, so I studied geographical information science. It's been a really fascinating 15 years. If you look back what happened at the turn of the millennium, where there was interest starting to pick up around street mapping. I in many ways feel that we're now in a similar stage with the indoor mapping as we were back then with the outdoor mapping. And it's really been very interesting for me personally. I started my career at TomTom, even a couple of months before it became TomTom, so no one really at the time felt that there was a need for maps. I was the first mapping guy at TomTom actually, and of course you know what happened after that. That was a very interesting consumer aspect of the industry evolution. A few years later I joined more of the enterprise side, working for Transport for London in the United Kingdom and the UK National Mapping Agency Ordnance Survey. There I continued to see the evolution of what can be done with street maps. Really fascinating. But you know, what I find particularly interesting is now the fact that the focus has been so strongly on street mapping. So obviously here has got 25 years of experience of mapping, you know, obviously through our Navtech acquisition. And that mapping has been on a very detailed, granular level. But, you know, a couple of my colleagues and I, 2 years ago, realized that with all the great work that's being done on street mapping, you know, over 100 countries, navigable coverage, amazing stuff, there was still some gaps remaining. So we set out on a big challenge, which was really to try and fill the last remaining gaps in maps. And one of those is obviously countries that we had not mapped yet, and we introduced a tool called Map Creator, which brings in the crowd, which I know a few people have mentioned already on the panel, is the need for venue owners to contribute and to manage in a way that the content. Crowd tools, very important for that. So that was very interesting. The other part of the gaps in maps that we felt we needed to fill were more locally, here around us, right? What's between the streets? And that's where it gets really into the venue world. So, and we're not just talking about malls, train stations, and airports. We're also talking about city parks, you know, trade show grounds, you know, exhibition grounds, university campuses, museums, all the rest of it. That's really the area. It's not just about retail. It's what we call venue mapping. It's not just indoor mapping. It's also the outdoor world. So we set out to try and go after building that. And, you know, over the last 2 years, it's been amazing, the progress amongst many companies in the room, and also more generally as an industry. At Nokia, or should I say at here, as we're now called, the mapping part of Nokia, we've really taken that head on. The way we've approached it is we've started mapping. I think when we started, we had just a few venues. That was less than 2 years ago. Then 1 year ago, we had something like 1,500 venues. Now we've got 9,000, 1 billion square meters. 1 billion square meters of coverage in 69 countries. And you know, we're only just getting started, so it's really quite amazing how that's been going. So anyway, I would really like to bring in that mapping part. When it comes to venues, the way we see this is really there's 3 key areas. The first one is consumer mapping, and consumers will increasingly expect, in my view, this type of level of granular detail in the map, the last meter destination arrival. It's a consumer expectation that is growing now. The second one is really around advertising, right? That's what a lot of us are here to do. In many ways, I feel that the advertising space with the mobile phones now all containing positioning technology, there has been one remaining, well, actually quite a few, but one key remaining element to really speed up the uptake, and that has been lack of maps, right, indoors. So that's a very important one, the second one. The third one is enterprise. We're seeing a huge number of companies approaching us pretty much every week. My team is completely swamped at the moment. It's very exciting. Many use cases, which I'm sure we'll talk about more in a minute over the course of the day. Finally, from our point of view, what have we rolled out already? So we have got all this content that I've just talked about in 69 countries around the world. We have got customers, you know, obviously, you know, from public press releases that we're very excited about the fact that there are chip manufacturers who are very interested in our maps to optimize the location of the positioning. Of course, Qualcomm is an excellent example of that, which I'm very pleased to say. But also on the consumer side, consumer mapping, Bing Maps being an excellent example. And of course, our here portfolio of applications, all now adding the venue maps. Like I said, a key consumer requirement and a highly popular feature within our maps. Now, I'm extremely excited to be here. One final point, Nokia really believes in the need for standards when it comes to location within indoor spaces. It's one of the reasons why we helped to found the In Location Alliance. And I know many of you in the room are already members. We'd encourage more of you to join. We obviously do not want kind of Betamax VHS scenario, but there's not going to be a silver bullet. I think it's going to be, like was said before, a combination of technologies that really are the solution. So very, very excited to be here today. And like I said, I'll be bringing in a little bit more of the mapping perspective throughout the day. So thank you very much. Okay, so are any of you in the audience getting the kind of Hunger Games effect that I'm getting up here? It sounds like we're in a giant stadium and there's like an echo. Can you hear? Is the sound fine for you? Yeah? Okay, all right. So we've just gotten a lot of information, and let's unpack it a little bit. Just, Joseph, real quickly, your answers were quite comprehensive before, so
perhaps you can be more condensed in your follow-up here. What percentage of the indoor venues do you estimate today have been mapped? But kind of the totality. So Google are involved in that.
Yes.
Microsoft, you guys, and others. What do you think? Is it 1%? Is it 5%?
Yeah. So first of all, I'm highly passionate about this topic. So apologies if I go on a bit. I can go on for hours. Most of you who know me know.
But we won't let you go on for hours.
Very good. So to answer this specific question, we've done some calculations on the key venues around the United States and Europe, of course, being the main focus. And we already now have made statements externally that we have covered 99% of all major shopping malls based on our definition, which unfortunately I don't remember off the top of my head, but it is pretty much every single big shopping mall in every city in the United States and in Europe that we now claim to have. Which is really quite a significant proportion. I think 70% of our venues are retail specific at the moment. So in answer to that question, I think we've captured a very core part of at least the retail space from a shopping mall perspective. Obviously, there are many more retailers that we're going to be adding, but from a shopping mall perspective, also from an airport perspective, we're pretty well covered already.
Okay, in case you didn't get that was a tweetable moment. 99% of all the major shopping malls in North America.
In North America and a similar amount, slightly lower in Europe, but similar amount.
That doesn't necessarily include the retailers within the malls, it's the mall themselves.
The retailers within the malls are included, but it may be that the aisle level is not yet included in a lot of those venues yet. That's the next level.
All right, so you see this list of technologies up here. Have I left anything out?
Well, I've been really fascinated to talk with quite a few technologies. I think LED you've got on there. No, I think from my perspective, I think everything is there.
Okay, so these are all the technologies now that do indoor positioning. So which one of these or a couple of these are most speculative, least deployed and most speculative right now in terms of their position in the market? Anybody can answer. Jump in. Free for all.
So just off the top of my head, I think LED lighting is amazing, but that's going to take a lot of effort.
Okay, why is it amazing?
Well, I mean, the guys that I've been speaking to who are doing this, they're starting to roll this out in 1 or 2 locations at the moment. I think that's going to be a very heavy investment.
Unfortunately, we lost Dan Ryan of ByteLight, who was going to be here and do a case study. He's, dare I say it, raising money, and so he had to be somewhere else. But can you just briefly explain the LED effect?
Yeah, I mean, basically it's based on the frequency at which light bulbs flash. And, when your phone knows how fast the light here is flashing, it can remember that. And then when you're somewhere else, the lights flash at a slightly different speed. So you need a technology, the LEDs need to flash at the right speed. That's quite a big investment.
So I'm really interested in handicapping these to really give people in the audience a sense of which ones are likely to prevail, which ones are likely to be, sort of farther out, if at all. Sound and acoustic kind of location. Can somebody jump in with that and explain how that works and tell us whether you think that means anything? Don't be shy. No one wants to take a position?
So I'll state a few words, and I was the one who was trying to point out that comparing these technology is a controversial topic, whether it is done inside the company or a big forum like that. So instead of taking a position for one technology versus another, I think we should really look at what's on the bottom layer. Who is giving you what accuracy, ubiquity, cost, speed to implement, privacy. But one important thing is, what are end customers getting when they are using any of these technologies? So we are talking about retailers or venue owners trying to put these technologies in play. Another consideration they should really take is, will their end customers, the shoppers which they are trying to target, would they be happy to use some of these technologies? These technologies are one thing other than RFID. All of them, one thing which is common is they all are tied with a smartphone. So a smartphone has a camera, smartphone has Bluetooth radio, Wi-Fi radio, it has a speaker system. So all these technologies are trying to target a smartphone user other than RFID, and the basic camera itself, which is trying to target the human being there. But other technologies are pretty much, they will all work in different use cases. And instead of having a debate over which one is better, we should really try to figure out what is important if you are deploying these technologies.
Well, clearly, okay, I appreciate that very diplomatic statement that you just made. Clearly, not all of these technologies are going to proceed equally and penetrate equally in the market. Cameras are the most widely deployed. I mean, that's kind of the legacy indoor system. My understanding is that their accuracy is variable, although we'll hear later on from Retail Next, and they may have a different view. Wi-Fi is very widely deployed, as we've heard. Which of these technologies? I won't force you to handicap all of these, but which of these is going to be the most accurate in terms of locating the end user within an indoor environment? Which one gives the most precision? Leslie.
I mean, that's a difficult thing to say. It really,
you guys are just chickening out.
I mean, it depends on, you could blanket a retail store with all kinds of Bluetooth beacon tags. I mean, you could, instead of having an access point every 400 square meters, you could put them closer. It really depends on what you're doing inside the venue and what you're trying to accomplish. I mean, all the smartphones have the capability, you said, like cameras, they have, the audio capabilities, they have Bluetooth, they have Wi-Fi. But if you don't have the infrastructure there that's going to give you the levels of accuracy that you want, you're not going to get it, no matter what you do. The other thing is, users have to be intuitive about what they have. People come in, they go into a store, they turn on Wi-Fi. Bluetooth will be turned on. If you have to start training them to do other things with these different things, you're not going to get the people using the stuff. It has to be seamless. I mean, that's the one thing we're focused on, a seamless location experience where you can use everything on the device. I'm not saying cameras and audio won't be there, but for the time being right now, consumers need to know that they can go from one environment to the next and be able to still have a location experience. So outdoors, they can use satellites. When you're in urban challenge environments, you can use terrestrial data. There's sensor augmentation that can be used from the different sensors on the devices. When you go indoors, you can use Bluetooth, you can use Wi-Fi. When you have to start educating the consumer about, you leave this environment and then you go in here and then you have to get out of this application and then you have to do that and you have to turn this on, you've lost them. They don't want that. The geofencing today will all play a part of this as well. You can do geofencing with different ways. We can do it using our solutions. We can use it using gimbal and our proximity-based solutions. But it's the ease of implementation for the ecosystem that's going to drive a lot of these things. I think a lot of the things you said, Greg, do have merit, but it will depend on how the ecosystem develops, how the infrastructure support them, how the applications can take advantage of them, and how pervasive they will be with consumers with accepting these different things that have to be done.
Okay, so the very important point that you made is that if you ask consumers to do anything new, or if you have to educate them, the chances are they're not going to do it. I think that that's a very important point. I mean, I pointed out that consumers are already in stores doing this research with their smartphones. They already use Wi-Fi, they already use maps, so they know how to do those things. So I think that that's a very important point that has hung up the mobile payment space. But so we've already got cameras and Wi-Fi in these stores. Many of these other technologies are only now being rolled out or being tested in different situations. Mm-hmm. What is the incentive if there's no standard that emerges in the immediate future, and that's my operating assumption? What is the incentive that venue owners, mall owners, airports, hospitals, retail stores have to install these new technologies? Why, the why question, why are they going to install these different technologies that are more speculative, maybe more precise in some respects? What's going to drive that? Now, Zack, you've said nothing beyond your opening statement, so I expect a lot of things from you now.
Thank you.
Brilliant insights at this point.
As to why, there are reasons that venues will do it for consumers. Many people have in the past installed Wi-Fi for public Wi-Fi for a consumer benefit. But more and more retailers in particular are investing because they see a real value proposition in improving the operations and the effectiveness of their business. I think that if you look at the online shopping experience, it's relatively easy now to search for something online and buy it. And that is because e-commerce retailers have spent a great deal of time understanding where you go online, where you go on the page, and how you make that transaction. And these location-based services essentially allow us to bring that same set of tools to the retail environment. So we can understand where you go in a store and why you go there. And that can have profound impacts to your marketing department. Those insights will help conversion and will justify the investment in this infrastructure. One other note that I'd make on evaluating all of these technologies, when you consider the marketing value of them, it's really important to look at which of these technologies can uniquely identify a device versus those which are completely anonymous. One of the key features that marketers are looking for is intent. And to understand intent, we primarily use pathing. So you can see where someone is going and how long they're spending there. In order to do pathing, you have to uniquely identify a device from one location to the next. And that's where Wi-Fi and Bluetooth have a very high reliability in uniquely identifying a device, whereas many of the other technologies, while maybe have other virtues, cannot do pathing and therefore are supplemental but not able to be a primary business driver. So that's some of our experience in the why.
I see you chomping at the bit down at the end, Avinash.
Yeah, so I would probably try to put some of the things which I have noted when I speak to retailers who are our primary customers. And for precise indoor locationing, there are three main use cases for them to invest. One is rich analytics, second is user experience, and third is operational efficiencies. So what I mean by analytics, and there are several companies out here, with whom we partner with, retailers don't know what's going in their store. If you are a valued, high-end customer, you walk into the store, they don't know till the point of sale happens that you walked in and you are just leaving. You must all have encountered questions at the end of your shopping session. Did you find what you're looking for? By the time it is too late, and most of the people say, yeah, maybe they didn't find it, but it's too late, they are done with their shopping and they want to leave. This location technology knows when your important customer, or all customers, when they are coming in, if you want to greet them, you want to provide them specials, and know where they go about, where they are spending time. So analytics. Second point, user experience. Lot of the experience people, the offline retailers, the brick and mortar stores are trying to mimic is from online retailers, giving a unique experience to their customers. Imagine with precise indoor locationing, you trying to find some information about a product, pushing a help button on your smartphone and walking away from that place. And somebody with some associate with proper knowledge following you and talking to you about your questions. Imagine that kind of experience. That's what they are looking for. Third is operational efficiencies. To provide that kind of experience, they need to know who is the closest associate to this customer who made that request, who is knowledgeable enough in the department. Secondly, ship to store or pick up from store or drive-by shopping are getting a lot of traction these days. That means the store associates need to efficiently be routed to pick these items. So I see these three things which are driving the retailers to invest in new kind of indoor locationing technologies.
I'll add a couple of stats here that kind of really make you pay attention. Consumers do 80 to 90% of their online shopping or looking for things indoors. we talked to one retailer and they told us that consumers will normally come into a big box store with 12 to 15 items on a shopping list and leave with 9 because they can't find the rest. That translates into billions of dollars of lost revenue for them a year, right? These stores don't want to be a bricks and mortar and have people come in and use them as a shopping galleria and then go place their orders online and shop elsewhere. If they can build loyalty, if they can know the consumer, that's huge if they can capture that. The second thing, as we were talking about the analytics, even if it's not getting the consumer to buy 1 or 2 more products, just knowing what is going on in your retail space is huge. What's the demographic coming in? Do you have the right product at the front of the door when the soccer moms come in the morning and then the dads on the way home from work come in for the beer and chips? Are you hitting them with the right item at that point in time? If you've got a lot of activity going on in your high ticket items within a store, do you have your best sales staff there pushing the items? Do you schedule the right amount of people at the airports when planes are coming in? Where should they be at certain gates? If a retailer is getting most of the traffic within a mall, why don't I charge them double the rent versus the guy that's not getting anyone because he's down at an area of the mall where people don't go? So having that kind of information, even for a retailer, is just huge, knowing what your consumer's doing. And again, these people want to delight the customer and keep them coming back. They don't want them coming in and leaving. You think about, too, being in a mall and knowing where your top 5 friends might be if they've come into the mall. You have a better chance of getting them to go have lunch somewhere within the mall than to leave your place and go somewhere else. So it's information, it's getting the consumers to buy from you, it's getting the consumers to do things that they might not have intended to do. If I come in and I get all 10 items on my list, and when I buy the peanut butter, you send me a coupon for the jelly, now I've bought 11 items instead of the 10 that were on my list. All that adds up, and these are what these consumers, they want. They want to have ease of implementation, find things when they come in, and the retailers want the extra money, and they want to make you do something, a behavior now, and even something you might not have intended to do.
After the morning break, we have 2 very concrete case studies that will illustrate this stuff with existing deployments. We've also got a panel on indoor analytics that will speak specifically to some of this operational stuff that you're referring to. But Leslie, did I detect a gender stereotyping in your comments?
No.
Men go in the afternoon to buy beer and chips. Was that what I heard?
Well, that might be me because I'm not a shopper, so that.
Yeah. How many men have gone into stores to buy diapers? In the middle,
you know,
I'm one of those people, so I'm mildly offended by those remarks. Joseph, you wanted to follow up with something.
Just very, very quickly, in the United Kingdom, the cameras have already been used to do a lot of what was just said for, I think, 15 years now. Tesco is a great example, Marks & Spencer, and it's exactly for these reasons. I mean, there's a reason why when you come into these stores and you ask, where's the peanut butter, the guy won't just tell you where it is. He'll walk you directly to the product, because he doesn't want you not to buy it. And the staff are trained to do that. And that's exactly why these companies are investing in these technologies. So it's much more efficient. They don't want to lose that sale.
So we're going to go to audience questions in a second, but I want to ask Joseph a question. So maps are obviously the canvas on which a lot of data have been layered, both in the sort of online world and now in the mobile world. And I assume that you believe that maps will again be sort of the backdrop for all this data. So you see that as the sort of foundational element, and then more and more data on top of that. Sort of elaborate on that if you agree with that vision. Are maps going to be the primary UI for this indoor experience, or will there be something else in parallel? And others can jump in after Joseph has a chance to speak. That's a softball, really.
And actually I would almost go and say, it's a bold statement, but I would almost say that it's almost the other way around, that you need the map first, and then the technology around the positioning can come later. You think what happened with the street mapping, exactly the same thing. In the early 2000s, GPS had only just gotten started with the relaxation of selective availability by the CIA. So, GPS is a pretty new thing as well. And maps already existed. Internet mapping is a great example. How many PCs have got location capabilities? Okay, now more with Wi-Fi. But back in the day, very few, right? Yet there were many Google Maps, a great example. Heremaps.com, another very nice example today, doesn't have the ability to know exactly where you are to centimeter level. So I would almost go the other way around. I would say maps are a prerequisite for most of this stuff, and the technology for positioning can come later.
Okay, while Derek, are you in the house there? Okay, so Derek Top has the mic. Anybody who wants to ask questions about the technologies or these sort of scenarios that are being sketched out? So make yourself known and go ahead, respond to Joseph's comments.
Yeah, so what panel is if it's not controversial? So I'll disagree with Joseph here. I do agree maps are a very important part, but depending on what you are trying to achieve, you can live without maps. I'll give you an example. Say you want to just have a campaign of offers. Pepsi versus Coke is a great example. Pepsi may be trying to give offers if they know the user pattern that this guy is a Coke drinker and I know precisely that he's in soft drink section in front of Coke, I'm ready to give half off for Pepsi. Maybe this will convert this person into a Pepsi drinker. So in that user scenario, map could be really optional. But I'm just trying to be controversial here. But I see a lot of value in maps. Yeah. But in some use cases, you could start implementing precise locationing, either through proximity or whatever means without maps.
And I'd also add.
Yeah,
that,
sure, go ahead.
Maps are great for consumers and they're beautiful, but when it comes down to the business case for the retailer, maps aren't actually very actionable. It looks nice, you see a lot of fuzzy information and dots on it, but when you need to make a business decision, what we're finding is that they need tables. They need to see the performance in certain departments, in certain areas, and certain products, and those tend to have nothing to do with a map. So it really depends on the use case, but I would add we see a lot of value for applications with no map today.
Now we're finally getting into it. All right.
Yeah, I know we were actually advised to interject, so I think that's great that we're now doing that. I would just like to add to my statement. When I say maps are a prerequisite, I'm not just talking about the consumer side. I'm also talking about the back end that retailers use to do heat mapping and to do the analytics. Also, yes, it's true, you don't need a map to place the actual consumer in a certain aisle, but you do need to know where those products are on a map. So in every scenario, pretty much, you need some kind of a map at some stage in the process.
Maps as a metaphor. All right, in the back.
So Russ Markowski and VisitTrack. To Leslie's point, there's a lot of demand for accurate location, but the question is, what are the retailers willing to pay for that? So per store, if you want to talk about specifics, let's say you have a 100,000 square foot store, what do you see from your customers, the retail customers? Are they willing to spend upfront, monthly? What are the economics of that?
Anybody?
How much are retailers willing to spend?
That's an interesting question.
And will somebody else, let me add to that, and if the retailers won't spend it, will somebody else come in and foot the bill?
You know what I would say? The retailers are already putting in infrastructure for Wi-Fi, for data networks, right? So the indoor location actually gives them an added bonus to say, if I've already spent the money for the data infrastructure, how are there ways I can monetize other ways to make my data network more valuable? So if the infrastructure is already there and there's an opportunity to monetize with different services, why wouldn't you go after that? On some of the new greenfield opportunities, because what we're finding is many malls don't even have Wi-Fi infrastructure right now. And there's a lot of pull from them, but I can tell you honestly too, there's a lot of validation going on to make sure that if I put this stuff in, there is going to be an opportunity for a business case for me. Not only do I want to service my customers by having Wi-Fi available for them, but if I am going to spend the money, I want to know there's additional value I can get. So, excellent point. I think the retailers are still struggling with what is the business model and who owns that customer when they come in. But one thing we're finding too is many of these retailers have their own application developer community, so that when you come into a venue, you will download their app and that is how they will try to interact with you when you're in the store. That actually gives them a better opportunity to capitalize on the revenue that can come from that, maybe from advertising, operational efficiencies from the analytics that they can collect, or maybe getting the individual to buy another product and stuff. So it's, you know, I wish I could say with 100% affirmation, retailers are all on board to go and spend this money and do it, but I think the business cases are still trying to prove out. And as we talk to different people in the ecosystem, the question is always there. Who's paying for this? What is the business model, and what's my ROI on this stuff?
Okay,
so very fair question.
We're into the 5-minute zone, less than 5 minutes. Anybody want to quickly respond to his question, in addition to Leslie?
Yeah, so I'll respond. It depends on retailer to retailer. We have seen the whole spectrum of things. One thing which is common, given that we do answers all the RFQs which come out for Wi-Fi, pretty much majority of retailers, when they are asking to upgrade their Wi-Fi equipment, the requirement they are asking their vendors is how precise would you be able to locate my users. So they are not building infrastructure to just serve the Wi-Fi need for coverage. They are deploying it to provide precise locationing. And the concept of endless aisles are really catching up. A lot of these retailers have online presence, and they would like to sell things which are not sold offline. So it's getting back to what I said earlier. Some retailers are at forefront of this. They understand the whole ecosystem. They will invest not only money in precisely knowing the XY, but also in developing the app which can enable those use cases. And some of them are just catching on. They are starting with analytics, and they are trying to know what their customers are doing. But I believe next phase would be to really now engage with their customers using these technologies.
Okay, I want to get another question in.
Hi, Jim here, Jim Wang with IQ. Just a quick question, who's responsible for ownership of the indoor location data, right? It could be an aisle, it could be a mall, and what are the responsibility as you guys seeing as far as sharing that data, right? I don't want to download every single app, going to every single retailer to find the location data for every single place.
Okay, one response quickly, since we're coming to the end.
We own and operate infrastructure. Our venues often own and operate their infrastructure. Ownership doesn't seem to be a key consideration. There are plenty of ways to handle that contractually. Ownership of the data is a very new frontier, and it's going to be something that operators and venues are going to have to work together on, because one, it's valuable, and two, there's potential for abuse. Particularly as you look at uniquely identifiable data. And people are very cautious today, as they should be. And so there's responsibility of both partners there to be clear and protective of that data.
Okay, so, okay, super quick, Twitter style.
Quick question, what do you guys think of RFID and magnetic?
RFID?
And magnetic.
And magnetic? Was that the question? What's the outlook for RFID and magnetic? Okay, super quick, one person. Thumbs up. Thumbs down, sideways. Somebody.
No idea.
So RFID, I stated earlier, has the problem that it is still not there in consumer phones. So that kind of leaves that one a little bit out of the league. Yeah. Having said that, it could still be used in a variety of different cases. Magnetometer and magnetic field, again, this is something which are getting built in smartphone. Accuracies, there are several claims. So if that suits your use case, all power to you.
Okay, so we didn't really answer the question who's going to pay for all this, but we will pursue it in our next session and throughout the day. I want to give each of you, we're a little bit over, but I want to give each of you the opportunity to say one final thing about the outlook for all this stuff. I mean, where are we going to be in a year and 18 months with all of this? Just one or two sort of final thoughts. And we're going to do the Don Dodge keynote, and then we'll have a break, and these folks will be around for more questions and conversation. So
Okay,
Avinash,
2
you
lines.
start.
So I believe currently the things which are deployed, which you can see, roughly give you 5 to 10 meter kind of accuracy, which is good for several use cases. But there are technologies out there, and some of them we are doing pilots with some retailers where you can get up to 1 meter of accuracy, and that opens up all sorts of use cases. Very precise, targeted ads or offers, the endless aisles I talked about, and some of the use cases which I talked about earlier. So I believe the industry will go, not all of them, only where it is needed, will go towards, towards the 1 meter accuracy and really knowing where the person is inside an aisle and not miss the aisle, really know at shelf level where this person is.
Okay, we're over time, so very quickly.
I would say all the ingredients for making this happen, all the pieces are in place, and they've been in place for a few years now. And so I don't expect any rapid evolution in the market, but it will happen, and it's a good time to have a strategy in place.
I have to agree with that. I mean, look at how long it took outdoor to happen, and some people still don't know they can do navigation on their smartphone today. It's going to take some time, but I think it's going to happen a lot quicker. Number one, because the infrastructure is there. Number two, because consumers know how to use their smartphones and how to use location on it. Number three, there's a lot of different pull from competitors in the industry. There's over 100 different folks out there peddling indoor location opportunities out there. So people are getting smart just by default of what people are offering. So I think the time is ripe to be on the leading edge, to get out there. If people don't get out there, other people are going to come in and implement solutions around them. So if you want to be a player here, I think you need to get started, and the industry will grow faster than it did for outdoor applications.
Okay, final word, Joseph.
Yeah, so like I said, we're going to fill the last remaining gaps in our maps in the world that we live in. And I think from a retail perspective, retailers are more than willing, in fact, they're willing to pay us to be in the map, given our distribution channels for here. So that's going to accelerate further. And the education of the users is the next thing. We really need the consumers to understand the value of being tracked, right? We saw with Nordstrom what can go wrong. So that's going to be a big focus for retailers over the next 12 to 24 months, educating those consumers.
Okay, please join me in thanking the panelists for their comments and their thoughts.